Hello everyone, I'm a software developer with 7 years of experience, and I'm going to tell you how to use the Tradestation API in Python. So here's what we're going to cover. First thing, I'm going to talk about how to actually get an API key from Tradestation. Then I'm going to talk about how to authenticate and connect to the Tradestation servers using that API key. Talk about the nuances of refresh and access tokens and how that whole system works. This, for me personally, was the most confusing part of learning how to use this API. We'll talk about simulated and live connections. So simulated connection will let you test order placing logic without any risk of losing money, whereas a live connection obviously will interact with your real accounts and your real money that's in TradeStation, and you've got full risk, but you can fully automate using this. We're going to talk about getting market data. So there's two main ways to get market data. You can either get a historical snapshot. For example, you could pull 15-minute data for the S&P 500 continuous futures contract between January of 2020 and say March of 2022. Or you could also just stream updates. So you could say, give me the last 5 days worth of 15-minute data for the S&P 500 and make sure that every 15 minutes I'm getting the new data that comes in. I'm going to cover the get symbol details endpoint. This is a very useful endpoint that, for example, with a continuous futures contract, will tell you what the underlying current month contract symbol is in TradeStation. It will give you the big point value. It will also, I think for equities, it will tell you if the symbol is available for short sale or not. So that's super nice. I'll talk about how to get information about your accounts. So this would, for example, if you have like 5 accounts at TradeStation, or you have an equity account and a futures account, you can use this endpoint to get that information efficiently. So you can get like the different account numbers and things, and I think it gives a little bit of metadata about like what exactly the accounts are usable for. So then we'll talk about getting balance information. You can either get real-time balance information, or you can get balance information from the beginning of the day. That's kind of snapshotted. This can be nice. You can track how you've done throughout the day by comparing the two. Talk about getting orders. Again, you can either get a snapshot of orders, so all orders placed between 2 dates, or you can stream orders as they come in. Same thing with positions. Same pattern, rather. Talk about confirming orders. That's a very nice endpoint. It lets you see what the anticipated commissions and slippage are for the order that you're proposing. Also, I think it says some stuff about margin requirements and how your balance compares. So this is super nice. You can use this, then you can put some logic afterwards to determine whether you actually want to place the order or not. Obviously, talk about how to actually place orders with the API, how to cancel orders, how to get information about routes. If you really want to fine-tune your executions, you might want to route your orders to different places, and you can use this endpoint to figure out what routes are available. And then I've got 3 bonuses. Like at this point, you'll have, I think, 99% of what you need to actually, get up and running with the API in Python. But there's a few things that I decided to throw in here that I found useful, just in case someone else has a similar problem. So one is I'm going to talk about how to stream tick bars. So you can do this with, so basically instead of time-based bars, you can get bars that are based on the amount of ticks that took place in the market. So like instead of every 15 minutes, it'll be every 500 ticks. And you can get this using the V2 endpoint. And I'll just show you guys how to do that. Second bonus is I'll show you guys how to pull a lot of data efficiently using asynchronous programming. So an example of what I benchmarked was in 2.5 minutes, I was able to pull 24 years worth of intraday data across 8 symbols. And this is on retail hardware, a standard internet connection. I mean, even over Wi-Fi. This is quite I think pretty much anyone would be able to get similar results. So if you wanted to pull, say, data, intraday data, 24 years worth of intraday data across all, US future symbols, you could do it in probably, under half an hour with this method. So that's, if you want to set up some kind of larger back test, this could be a nice way to start. And the data is more or less included with your TradeStation account, so it's a pretty cheap way to get this data also. Then the third bonus is I'm going to talk about automated contract roll for futures. So I'm pretty much just providing pseudocode here because it depends a lot on your the exact way in which you're placing orders and how you're executing things. But I think anyone who's taken the above seriously would be able to complete this pretty easily. Before we get started, there's a few more things I want to mention quickly. So first of all the code that's used in this video is available at the GitHub link, at the GitHub repo linked in the description. I've also provided a link to the TradeStation API documentation and a link to the TradeStation developer forums. There will be timestamps throughout the video, and hopefully you can use this as a reference and skip to the parts that you need. I want to also mention quickly that this is in no way, nothing in this video is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm just telling you guys about how to use the API. And this is a screenshot of the post in the developer forums that I used as the foundation for the notebook that I'm going to use throughout this video. So I'd highly recommend the developer forums. They're extremely helpful. This is a post by Chris. Shout out to Chris for sharing this. I think it's a fantastic notebook. And yeah, if for some reason, for example, you don't trust my code, you don't want to like enter your credentials into the URL that's generated from running the code, as you'll see. You could just go to the developer forums and use one of the pieces of code that's generated by TradeStation employees instead. So yeah, highly recommend the developer forums, and I want to shout them out before we get into things. All right, step one, getting an API key. So obviously, in order to use the API, you're going to need an API key. It's relatively simple to get an API key. So if you do not already have an account with TradeStation, then you can open an account with this code, fund it with at least $10,000, and they will send you an API key. So I did not do it this way because I already had a TradeStation account before I wanted an API key. But if you do not have an account, this is a pretty straightforward way to get an API key. The other way is, if you have at least $10,000, you can email support and ask them for an API key. They'll give you an email with an encrypted attachment that you will decrypt using one of your account numbers. They'll tell you which one. And when you do that, you'll have something that looks like this. This is what basically the decrypted attachment looks like. And it gives you links to like the developer forums that I mentioned earlier. And then it also gives you your API key and your secret key. So you would need both of these to really use the API and keep them safe. But once you got that, you've got your key. Now that you've got your API key, let's talk about authenticating and connecting to the TradeStation servers. So at a high level, what you're going to do is you're going to use your API key to generate a refresh token. This refresh token will then be used to generate an access token. These access tokens are what you'll actually use to make calls to most of the API. Refresh tokens last forever by default, whereas access tokens only last 20 minutes. It's worth mentioning that refresh tokens can be revoked if for some reason you suspect that there might be a breach in security somewhere. But they do say that if you do revoke, it looks like you can revoke a particular refresh token, but if you call this endpoint, you'll actually revoke all refresh tokens. So if you have like different refresh tokens for different applications with, say, different like permissions. This could be a mess if you, because you could end up thinking you're only revoking it for one application, but then end up revoking it for another, and that would break the other one. So just something to be aware of. Now, let's talk about how to actually do this. So, as I mentioned, we're going to use the API key to generate a refresh token. That's the first step. So in the code, we've got, I have the API key and the secret key as environment variables, because obviously I don't want you guys logging into my account. And then, all right, and then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to run this code, which generates a URL requesting a code that will enable you to get a refresh token with the requested permissions. So I'm not going to run that, because if I run that, it will print you run it, it prints out the URL, which has the client ID. So you guys would have been able to see my API key here if I were to have ran the code. But anyway, so what will happen is if you run this, it'll generate this URL. If you click on this URL or you copy and paste it into your browser, you will then be taken somewhere like this. Tradestation will ask you to basically authenticate this request by logging into Tradestation, and then then you click accept. The specific permissions are listed in this URL. So like here it says market data, profile, read account, trade, offline access, matrix, option spreads. And you see we've got profile, market data, read account, trade, matrix, option spreads, offline access. All right, so once you accept this is what tripped me up for the longest time, is you'll probably get something that looks like this. So this confused me forever. Not really forever, but this was definitely quite confusing. So I thought that it failed whenever I saw this the first time, but it actually didn't. So what you're looking for is in the URL, you're looking for basically this code that will be here. So I blocked it out so that you guys can't see what my code was. But basically you follow those steps and you should land on a web page that looks something like this. And you can grab this, you can copy this code. And once you copy that code, you'll put it right here. So you put that code right here. So you paste it here, inside of quotes. And then, if you run this code, this will basically send off the code, your secret, and your API key to make an authorization request to get the actual refresh token. And then the response will have within it the refresh token. So you can extract, that's what's happening right here, is I'm extracting the refresh token from the response, saving it to the variable refresh token, and I'm printing it. Now, I'm not going to run it because obviously I don't want to print my refresh token for you guys to steal. But that's what will happen whenever you run this code. I already had a refresh token, or already do have a refresh token rather, so I'm loading it as an environment variable here. But you would take the printed refresh token and place it here, or save it as an environment variable yourself, and then you could load it. But that is how we get a refresh token. Now, once we have the refresh token, we can then run, start making calls to this function called get access token that will generate an access token using your API key, your secret, and your refresh token. Okay, and so again, these only last 20 minutes, so you will need to call this a lot, but you can do it now. So that is the core of authentication. So now, like, if you followed all of this, you should have your refresh token available. You should be able to call this and get access tokens. And then we can move on to using those access tokens to actually make calls to get things like market data going forward. So we've covered how to get an API key, authentication and connecting to the Tradestation servers. We've covered the differences between refresh and access tokens, their nuances and how to use them. So now we're going to talk about the difference between a simulated and a live connection. So the main difference is just in the URL. For all practical purposes, the difference is that to connect to SIM, use sim-api.tradestation.com. And to connect to live, you just use api.tradestation.com. So this is practically what you need to know for connecting to SIM or live. But the reasons why you'd want to connect to SIM are primarily that around the order placing functionality. So if you place orders on SIM, you're not going to lose any money. If you place orders on live, you very well could lose money. Now in the code, the simulated versus live connection is determined by this variable here, core URL. Right now it's set to SIM for demonstration purposes, but if you wanted to change this to operate live, you would simply delete this sim-api. So like now it would be set to live, but I'm going to keep it on SIM. And as you can see here, whenever we make API calls and we specify the URL, in this case, this is for market data. This core URL variable is just kind of the prefix to the main URL, and this will just propagate it throughout all of the different API calls. So yeah, if you want to change it to live, you just delete that, and then everything will be live. All right, so it's time to get to the fun stuff now. So we've got authentication behind us. We've got our refresh token. We've got the ability to generate access tokens. We've got a simulated core URL value, so we don't have to worry about accidentally placing orders on our live account and losing money while we're testing things out. So yeah, let's get into how to get market data. All right, so first things first, we're going to need an access token. And I do not have an active access token. They only last 20 minutes, like I said. So we're going to need to generate a new access token, which is what this function call is doing. We need to specify the URL that we want to target, or the endpoint that we want to target within the API. This endpoint, we're using the core URL sim URL as basically the prefix. And then we're basically, pathing to the exact location in the API that we want to target. So if we go over here, I can show you how I got that. So if we're, at the top of the API, v3, which is the most current version, and the one we want to use, we go to market data. We use get bars, which is the one that gets the snapshot. Then we go over here, we click Python. And this is where I got the URL from. So if you copy that and put it here, it's basically the same as this, except I replaced this prefix and I replaced the actual symbol that we're targeting to the S&P 500 continuous futures contract, whereas they have Microsoft. So you can also, you can change this to whatever you want, obviously, but that's what we're doing here. We need to get authenticated. So we need to, whenever we make this request, we need to pass an active access token. So since we just generated a new one, this one will be active. We passed that in the headers section. And then in the parameters, we're actually going to specify the sort of details about our query. So there are actually a fair number of parameters that you can mess with for this endpoint. But we chose to do essentially to get the last 10 5-minute bars. So that's what we're doing. And again, we're doing it for S&P. After that is specified, we then can make the GET request using the request library. So that's what's going on here. We get a response, and we can visualize it more easily by converting to a JSON. And yeah, here are the last 10 5-minute S&P bars. We can see, you know, there's high, low, open, close. We've got the timestamp for them, which should all be 5 minutes apart. That one's, you know, at 40. This one's 45. This one's 50. This one's 55. We've got volume, upticks, downticks, whatever. You can take this, you can put it in, say, a pandas data frame, and you know, do whatever you want with it. All right, before we move on to talking about how to stream market data, I want to quickly show you where you can see the other optional parameters that you could mess with. So over here in the documentation, you could change the interval size. So if maybe instead of 5 minutes like we use, you want to use 15 minutes, or you want to use 7 minutes, you change that here. You can specify the unit. So maybe you want to use daily data instead of minute data. Bars back, pretty self-explanatory. It's what we used. We had a 10, set it to pretty much whatever. The first date and last date can be used to specify a specific interval that you want to, or time interval, like obviously not this kind of interval, but like an interval in time, like for example, you know, like they have here, where you could do I don't know, you could do the beginning of 2020 to the end of 2020, for example. You can also do some stuff with the session. So you could filter by the session. So let's say you only want like the last 5-minute bars from the pre-market, the US like pre-market session. Then you could use this US equity pre value here for this session template parameter. All right, now to stream market data. You'll see a lot of the same patterns repeating. We get a new access token. We specify the endpoint. In this case, we use stream bars. We get the URL from right here. There's less optional query parameters than in the get bars endpoint, but that's kind of expected because you're also streaming updates in this case. Again, we pass it in the access token to get authorization. We do the same kind of setup here, and then we go ahead and call this. And what we see is, so it starts off by giving us the last set. Now the market's actually closed right now, so it's just sending a heartbeat. But something that I want to mention here is that if the market were open right now, what it will do is it will send the current like close value. It'll send the current bar that's in formations values for all of these. So like if you ever watched a chart develop, you can see like the tick by tick growth of the bar. And so yeah, what this streaming will do is basically at the frequency you see here, it's going to give you updates on where the high of the currently forming bar is at, where the low of the currently forming bar is at, where the open, etc., for all these values. Now, whenever the bar actually closes and you have a like a completed, in this case, 5-minute bar, then you'll have this bar status closed value. Otherwise, it's going to say bar status open. And so basically what you would do if you wanted to stream data and you wanted to say, place a trade or evaluate some logic, whenever the like a 15-minute bar formed, you would monitor this bar status value. So if bar status is closed, then you would do something. All right, now we're going to cover get symbol details. So if we go over to the specifications, get symbol details, this fetches symbol details and formatting information for one or more symbols. So as you can see here, they call it for 2 symbols. They call it on Microsoft and Bitcoin USD. We're just going to call it on the S&P futures. So if we run this, then we get a couple of really useful pieces of information. So one of them is we get this underlying field, which tells us basically the top month contract for the S&P right now. So this is like, you have to actually, if you want to trade futures, this is what you have to trade. you can't actually trade like the continuous contract. You have to trade a specific contract, and this is the specific contract that right now is sort of the most liquid and is most people are trading. It also gives you information on like the sort of the price and the sort of the leverage that's involved in the case of this futures contract. So like the increment is basically the minimum movement in the price of the symbol, and the point value is the like worth in dollars of a 1 point move in the symbol. So if the S&P goes up by $1, the futures contract goes up by $50. Okay, now we're getting into a number of calls from the brokerage section that are all going to return account numbers when they're called. So I'm not going to be running most of these. I'm just going to be showing you kind of censored output like this. So the first one I'm going to talk about is how to get your account. So this lets you see all of the accounts that you have with Tradestation. So it also does depend on the core URL. So if you're passing in a simulation URL like we've been so far, you're going to get simulated accounts. And these accounts, as you can see, kind of tells you like what type of account it is, if it's active or not, the currency is, if it's a margin account, yeah, all kinds of random information about your account. Obviously, this can be really useful for finding specific like account IDs and then using those as inputs to further calls. I mean, this is basically what I do here. So I use this to get the account ID that I want to use for this demonstration. I took that account ID and I assigned it. I basically created an environment variable, and now I'm reloading that environment variable here to this account ID variable. And then this is going to be used to make a number of the other API calls. So that's get accounts. Now, the next one to talk about is get balances. So this gives you information on like how much cash is in your account, how much like what's your margin situation. So if we go over here and we look at the output of calling this, we see, for example, that we're looking at a futures account that has like $1 million in it. It has about $1 million of buying power. We see like how much in excess of sort of the day trading limit is in the account. Now, I think this only would apply for like equity accounts that are trying to track the pattern day trader rule. I don't think this matters for futures accounts, and you don't see it's not any different than the cash balance. You can see, how much like margin you have, your realized and unrealized P&L. Yeah, this is kind of the general get balances information. And then you can get balances. Also, like it should be noted that you have to pass in a particular account ID. It wouldn't really make sense to get balance information like without that. So it's getting the balance information for a specific account. You can also get the beginning of day balance rather than like the live balance. So this gives you the live balance, and this gives you the value of basically all of these variables as they were at the beginning of the day. So you can run this. The only difference is BOD balance is here instead of balance. It's balances. Otherwise, they're identical. And yeah, you can run comparisons between these and, do whatever you want. Okay, now we're at orders. So to get orders, at least historical orders to start, it's, pretty similar pattern. We're going to call the endpoint. We will get something that looks like this. So it tells us, for each order, when does the order expire? What did you order? There's, what asset is the order on? If the order was executed, what was the execution price for the order? Getting current orders, it's not really any different than getting active orders or getting historical orders, except with historical orders, you would specify obviously some kind of look back period for it. So you can do since. Also, I mean, it's worth mentioning with orders that there is a page size limit. So if you have a lot of orders, you can run into situations where you have to paginate through using this next token value that will be returned. So that's worth keeping in mind. Yeah, you also have an opportunity to stream orders rather than to get snapshots of orders. So the historical orders, this gets you like a snapshot of them. The current orders also gives you a snapshot of today's orders and any outstanding active orders. And then you have the option to set up a stream, just like we did with market data, but this time it will do it for orders. So if there's changes to your orders, there's new orders, they'll come through automatically if this stream is open. Something also to keep in mind whenever you're streaming data is the stream will actually stay open for longer than the 20-minute expiration time on the access tokens. So if you set them up, you don't have to like refresh the access token every 20 minutes while they're running. You only have to do that before you make the call again. So if you notice that like the heartbeat hasn't come in for a while, that can be a signal to terminate the stream and get a new access token and generate a new stream. Okay, positions follow basically the same pattern as orders. You can get a snapshot of positions with this, and you can get a stream of your positions with this. There's not that much really to say about them. I mean, I think you guys should be comfortable with the pattern by now. You can get the positions for multiple accounts simultaneously. You same pattern, same rules apply to streaming them. All right, so let's talk about confirm orders. So this is a really cool endpoint in my opinion. It allows you to so the payload here basically specifies the details of the order that you're thinking of placing. So in this case, I'm thinking of placing a sell market order on the top month S&P contract, ESZ24. I'm telling it to just use an intelligent route, and I'm sending this to this confirm order endpoint. And what this returns is like some really interesting information. So it'll tell you like the estimated execution price for your market order, the estimated cost, and so this is like the initial margin for an S&P 500 futures contract. It'll give you an estimate on the commissions that'll be charged. This is in a sim account, so this is 0, but if this was a live account, it would give me like a realistic commission estimate. It gives me the initial margin, and it gives me kind of a summary of what the order is. So this is, I think this is a very, very nice endpoint because you can do things like run this and see if the margin is going to push you over your position sizing rules. You can do stuff with like commissions where if the commission is too high or the slippage is too high based on the estimated price, you can not execute the trade. So this is a very cool endpoint that, yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Again, the structure is the same as we've seen before. It has sort of a couple additional fields, but it's all kind of specified here. And there's a ton of options when it comes to the details of an order, because you can have like different legs to your order. I mean, Tradestation has so many different ways to create orders that I mean, it's kind of beyond the scope of this video to go through all of them, but they're all available via the API, and they're in here. They're also, I think, under like place order. Yeah, you can see the same parameters. Yeah, so after you've ran confirm order and things look good and you're ready to actually place the order, naturally you will want to run place order, or you want to access that endpoint. So if we go here, again, it's order execution orders is the URL. If you take a look at this, this is what it looks like when you run this. It'll give you the order ID, and it'll give you kind of this message for what it did, which is nice. You need this order ID if you want to cancel orders or run the replace order command. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. Yeah, if you want to cancel an order, you just specify the order ID, and you use the cancel order endpoint here. Again, and if you want to replace the order, you would do the same thing, but just replace order endpoint. We can talk about getting routes, as that pretty much covers orders. Yeah. So if you want to really fine tune your execution, you might be interested in sending different orders to different routes and not just using, for example, the intelligent route that I used above, which is basically just an automatic routing thing where Tradestation basically determines the best route for you. So if you run this, it will generate basically all the available routes, which is quite a lot. So if you want to do this though, yeah, you can dive into this, and I have not actually done anything with this personally, so I don't know all the ins and outs of routing. But if that's something you want to do, yeah, this is how the API supports it. Okay, so we've covered pretty much everything you need to know to use the Tradestation API in Python. We got you an API key, covered authentication, covered simulated versus live connections. We talked about getting market data, getting account information, orders, positions, confirm order functionality, how to cancel orders and get routes. So yeah, you should be able to build whatever you're looking to build at this point. I mean, there's a few things in the API that I didn't cover, like mostly related to options and crypto, but they follow more or less the same pattern. So you should be able to kind of take this and run with it there. Still, there's a few bonuses that I wanted to include. So the first one, I want to talk about streaming tick bars. So this is actually a really easy way to do this. So if you go to the API under V2 market data, there is an option to stream tick bars explicitly. So following the same pattern we've been using, you can basically run this, and you can get, in this case, 100 tick bars on the S&P. Market's closed whenever I ran this, but it follows the same pattern as all the other streaming, and yeah, it gives you tick bars. The second bonus I want to talk about is how to get a lot of data efficiently using asynchronous programming. So if you're trying to get intraday data, say 24 years worth of intraday data, the API will not let you simply query that in one go. You're going to go over the limit. And so what you have to do is you have to chunk your request. So you have to request, like, let's say a year at a time. So you'll basically request for, like, let's say the year 2000, and then the year 2001, and the year 2002, and then the year 2003. Well, if you're doing this synchronously, what your code's going to effectively do is it's going to, for like the year 2000, it's going to go out and it's going to say, hey, give me the data for the year 2000, and then it's going to wait. The server's going to respond and provide the data. It's going to, basically, say thank you, take the data, save it, and then it's going to go to the next step, and it's going to do 2000 and 2001, and then 2002, and then 2003. And every time after it makes the request, it's going to wait for the server to respond before it does anything else. Well, if you think about it, the program is spending most of its time just waiting for a response from the server. So with asynchronous programming, we can get around that, and we can have it just basically send off all the requests at the same time, approximately, and then it'll sort of wait for all of the responses from the server in parallel. And so I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And as I mentioned in the introduction, sort of the result of doing this was that I was able to pull 24 years worth of 15-minute resolution data on 8 future symbols in 2.5 minutes. And yeah, the code to do this is also in the Git repo, if you wanna take a closer look at it. So here's what the code looks like. Basically, you can see. I'm not going to go too in depth into like all the detail of this code, because this video is already getting quite long at this point. But basically, the parts that you would need to change are you would need to specify your credentials here. So client ID is basically the API key, client secret is the secret key, and the refresh token, you need a refresh token. We went over how to get a refresh token in the authentication section. You would want to change the interval that you want. If you let's say you wanted 20-minute data, you would change this to 20. You would, if you wanted, instead of 24 years, I don't know, maybe you want a different interval. This goes through August 29th of this year, 2024. So if you wanted a different end date, different start date, you could change that here, depending on the resolution. So if you do 5-minute bars instead of 15-minute bars, your chunk size might have to be smaller because there'll be more data. And so the chunk size right now is set at 365 days, but it might need to be, you might need to make it half that if you lower your interval size. Yeah, what's going on here is it's basically making all the API calls, and then it's converting the results into a pandas data frame, and then it's saving those as a CSV file with this name. And then the actual markets that it's running on is specified right here. So you can change these out to whatever markets that you want to pull data for, and adapt it to your purposes. That's pretty much it with this. It's not that complicated. If you haven't seen these asynchronous functions, it can be a little weird to wrap your head around, but it's not too bad if you read up on it, or you throw it into Claude or GPT. They'll explain this. They'll explain this pretty well. All right, the last bonus that I have, and the last thing that I want to cover in this video is automated contract roll for futures. So it's at the bottom of this Jupyter notebook. There's some just kind of pseudocode, as I mentioned in the introduction, that approximately does this. So the basic idea is that we can get the front month contract from the continuous contract via the API. And then if we have this, we can compare this to the contract that we're currently trading. If those are different, then we know that we need to update the contract that we're trading because we want to be trading the front month. And if we happen to have a position, so we're not flat, that's what this is saying, then we're going to need to roll. And to roll, all we have to do is close our position in the basically the contract that we've been trading, and then sort of reopen it in the new contract. And if we don't have a position, then it's really easy. We just set the contract that we're trading to the new contract, and that's handled. That does it. This is the end of the video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or reach out to email on my channel. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.